Parker, tell us about our program.
Make it funny.
That lovely lady that just talked to us, we were at an air show together once. She's here with her sister, right? And we were at an air show one time, and we discovered that when I was in gunnery school, she would fly in AT-6s on pursuit curve and come in, we'd shoot cameras at her. And one day we shot down one of those tow targets. When we hit him, the gal landed in the desert. I'm going to get right to the speaker now, because, and he's only got 10 minutes.
That's hard for Lou Martin.
He's kind of shy. It was hard for us to get him up here. He's kind of reticent.
Can he say hello in 10 minutes?
Well, not this guy. And we finally persuaded him to come up here. He's kind of shy, and it took quite a bit of time. So I'm going to ask Lou Martin to come on up here and talk to us. Let's give him a hand.
Yeah, I am a little shy.
I'm timing you too.
Shy of what?
Hey Lou, where's your name tag?
Well,
Name tag? What do you say?
Where's your name tag?
Nobody knows you.
that's a great speech. Let's give him a hand.
Well, we all know that Vince Parker, he demands that you have a name tag or he won't even let you in the room. So I don't want to get Vince pissed off at me, so I brought a name tag. And I'm going to put it on.
Oh my.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow.
How about that?
I can't read it.
Can't read it. Well, then the VA is still open. What are you shy
United
of?
States Navy make that?
Pardon me?
United States Navy make that?
Yeah, no. I had to show Vince this name tag. You checking my time, Bob?
I am, you bet.
I'll start my stopwatch. What I want to talk a little bit about today was the Plains of Fame. Can you hear me, Mary?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, go to sleep if you like.
Beep, beep, beep.
I want to talk a little bit about the Plains of Fame Air Museum and the Wildcat fighter. Now, I joined the Plains of Fame Air Museum as a pilot right around, I think it was in '87. And I swept floors, I parked cars, I sold tickets, anything to before they recognized that you were a pilot. That was the custom. And Spook well knows that. Wake up, Spook. And then Kermit finally checked me out in the Stearman, so I was doing Stearman hops. And Larry Dowd checked me out in the T6, which I flew in the Air Force training about 30 years before, which is interesting. Then I was flying co-pilot in the B-25, even flew a co-pilot in the B-17. And I was doing the support aircraft, the Bonanzas and the Stearman. I flew a Bonanza out to Palm Springs, California for Bob Pond, one down to Florida. And then, I think it was in '89, Kermit had to go up to Bismarck to recover a P-38 that was stuck up there. And Kermit said, Lou, he says, why don't you fly me up there in the Beechcraft Bonanza, the Beechcraft Baron, twin engine. So we went out to the airplane, and I went to climb in the right seat, and Kermit said, no, fly in the left seat, Lou, I want you to fly me up to Bismarck. Well, the flight went real well. You know when you're doing well, and you know when you aren't. The flight went real well. We got back to Minneapolis, and Kermit said, Lou, he said, I think we ought to check you out in one of the fighters. He says, which fighter would you like to check out in? And I said, the Wildcat. And Kermit said, the Wildcat? Why? He says, Jesus, it's only one person qualified in that Wildcat. It's a bitch on ground loops. Nobody likes to fly it. You have to crank the gear up manually. Cowl flaps are manual. I said, yeah, but Kermit, it sits in the hangar most of our air shows. And we were doing a lot of air shows in those days. I said, if I check out in the Wildcat, I'll be doing more air shows. And he says, well, I can't argue with that logic. He says, but go ahead. He says, if you want. He says, review the flight manual. Get Randy Sohn to give you a checkout. So I looked at the flight manual, and I think it was in '89 or '90. I think it was, yeah, it had to be '90. And Randy Sohn came out, and we're getting ready for a Memorial Day opening, and he leaned on one wing, and Steve Hinton on the other, and they told me about how to fly the Wildcat. It's a single pilot airplane, as you know, there's no dual control. So after they told me how to start the engine, I think they said, any questions? I said, no, where's the runway? And so I taxied out in that Wildcat. What an airplane, as Dick well knows. The airplane that I was flying, no guns, no bombs, no armor plating, light as hell, that thing just was a screaming airplane. It was a thrill to fly. There's another reason why I wanted to check out in the Wildcat. When that airplane was introduced to the Navy, I was 12 years old. And now at 62, I was checking out in it. There was a 50-year gap there that went real fast. Anyway, I went out around Lake Waconia on my first flight, did a few turns, a few lazy eights, and I thought, well, I'm going to do an aileron roll. So I went with a stick, rolled into an aileron roll. All I was doing was a steep turn. And I thought, hell, this is supposed to be a nimble fighter. Then I thought, well, my God, it's manual controls. I've been flying jet fighters. And I said, I'm a 22-year-old Marine with a Japanese zero on my ass, and all I got to do is to do something. So I threw that stick over with force, and that airplane was nimble as hell. and I think Dick will agree with me. And that's the way you had to fly the Wildcat. Now, every Memorial Day opening, we had a theme for our Memorial Day opening. How are we doing, Bob? What are we doing? Fine. You're still awake.
I'm still
That's my test.
4 minutes.
Use both hands.
4 minutes.
Bob, I'll let you go to sleep, Bob. Anyway, every Memorial Day opening we had a theme. Like in '92, it was the Doolittle Raid. We had Doolittle Raiders, and a lot of them did Plains of Fame. Bob remembers that.
Yeah.
'93, it was going to be a 50-year reunion of the Cactus Air Force, of the pilots that flew out of Henderson Field. And we heard that we were going to have 4 Medal of Honor winners as our guests, as our VIPs. Gaylor, Foss, DeLong, and Sweet. And I was anxious to be able to meet these guys, Medal of Honor winners, real vets. The Friday before our show, our opening, Jim Duffy said, Lou, he says, will you take the Wildcat, go out around Lake Waconia, and do some passes on the Channel 11 helicopter. They want to get some video. And I said, well, twist my arm. And I climbed that Wildcat. I went out and made passes on that helicopter. Just zoom. I had to slow up to about 100 so he could get some good film. And I came back. I got kind of lost coming back to Flying Cloud because Bob Pond was buying the gas, so I wasn't in a hurry. And I made 3 touch and goes on runway 36. It was kind of dusty. The landings were pretty decent. I taxied into Plains of Fame, and this silver-haired gentleman in blazer and tie and suit, he came up to me and he said, I've been watching you fly that Wildcat. He said, those landings are pretty good. And I says, well, thanks. And before I got a chance to talk to him, he went off to talk to some other people, and I asked one of the mechanics, I said, who is that guy that was just complimenting me in flying the Wildcat? He said, that's Jeff DeLong. So, yeah, you know him. So I was anxious to be able to meet these 4 guys. So the next day on Saturday, they were in the VIP area. I was busy on the ramp, but I made several low-level passes in the Wildcat. Violated the rules a little bit. I was making them by about 250, 260 knots at 200 feet right past the viewing stand. And I didn't get a chance to meet these 4 guys. Then I was still busy on the ramp. I had another flight in the T6 and the Wildcat, and then they left in the limousine. But I knew that I was invited to Bob Pond's residence up in the north shore of Lake Minnetonka that night for cocktails and a buffet. So I thought I'd get a chance to meet these 4 guys. Well, me, a nobody, I was a little late, and I walked into the bar area in Bob Pond's house. And listen to this. I walked in, these 4 Medal of Honor winners were standing around the bar, and they said, "A toast to Lou Martin." I couldn't believe it. And Foss came over and put his arm around me. They patted me on the shoulder and said, "Let us buy you a drink." And they were treating me like a hero for flying the Wildcat past in the reviewing stand. Now these 4 guys, I gotta put on my reading glasses, not my flying glasses. Bob, you still awake?
Yeah.
Okay. These 4 guys were Lieutenant Jefferson DeBlois. 8 kills, 5 on 131-43. He died on 11/22/07 at age 86. Another one was Major Robert E. Geiler. 14 kills. Died on age 92 and 05. This one, Joe Foss. 26 kills. 5 on 10/25/42. He died on 11/03 at age 88. James Sweat, 15 kills.
Wow.
7 on 4/17/43. He died at 1/18/09 at age 89. I'm going to pass these around. Bob, here, you go first so you keep me awake. And I was so humbling. Here I'm with these 4 Medal of Honor winners, and I'm standing at the bar drinking with them like I was back in the Air Force. It's just amazing. Now, I wanted to capture that moment. So how was I going to do it? Well, my letter of authorization to fly the Wildcat from the FAA, I had miniaturized it to a small piece of paper that I kept in my wallet. The back of it was blank. So I asked these 4 Medal of Honor winners if they would endorse the back of my letter of authorization for my Wildcat. And I enlarged it, but I have the signatures of these 4 pilots on the back of my letter of authorization for the Wildcat. It's on sale now on eBay for $4,000, and I've had several people interested. I don't know if I even want to sell it because it's so precious to me. But what an event that was for a kid from northern Wisconsin to be treated like one of them of 4 Medal of Honor winner pilots. And of course they're all gone. Now a little footnote. In 1995, Jim Duffy, still got my name tag on this. Jim Duffy came up to me, he said, "Bob Pond would like you to fly the Wildcat down to Sioux Falls, South Dakota for the Joe Foss Airport dedication." And I said, "Twist my arm." And he did. Didn't have to twist it very far. So I took that Wildcat down to Sioux Falls. I arrived a little early. Joe Foss and his entourage were not there yet, but I parked up right next to the terminal, and I was in having a Coke, and Joe Foss and his wife and his followers came in. And Joe Foss, somebody must have told him because it had been 2 years since I met him at Bob Pond's house. And he said, "Hey, little Martin." And I was in flight suit. And he says, "Thanks for bringing the Wildcat down." And he took his crowd of people out to the Wildcat to show them the airplane that he flew off Guadalcanal in 1942 and 43. That night there was a hangar dance and a dinner. I taxied the Wildcat over to the hangar, the open doors and the spotlights on it. And I was able to allow his kids and grandkids to sit in the cockpit of the airplane that their grandfather was made famous. And again, Joe Foss came out and thanked me. Can you imagine that? I had enough thanks. It's just amazing. The next day, I had to fly the airplane back to Minneapolis to Flying Cloud. That was in '95. I was up around 10,000 over Minnetonka. It was kind of, where was it? Mankato. Kind of a clear day. And I thought, here, I'm a 22-year-old Marine pilot. And I'm going to have fun. And Al's smiling. because we did the same thing down in Newton, Iowa. But I took that airplane, I did a few loops, a few rolls, diving around 300 knots, pulling about 4 Gs, yanking and banking. And Jesus, I think I'm not 22 anymore. I was completely wore out. Went back to Flying Cloud. It was a heavy rain. I landed in the rain, taxied in, kept the canopy closed. And as I was sitting there waiting for the showers to disperse, I kind of thought about the Marine pilots back in Guadalcanal must have been the same thing, sitting in the rain. The rain was pelting down that old airplane. The canopy was leaking. I was getting all wet. That was my last flight in that Wildcat. So anyway, I just wanted to share that experience with you. It's very precious to me. Now, while Bob's still awake, if there's any questions? Yeah.
Vince and I completed our evaluation, and besides, you're almost as good a speaker as your son. Congratulations.
Well, he's got a lot more experience than I have. But anyway, that was quite an experience. Any questions? Yeah.
Was Dick Duryea the pilot back with piloting on any of the days that you were there? It's all about him. Dick Duryea. Dick Duryea.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you do, Al?
He had pilot had that advanced machine too, and he was the pilot for that.
Yeah, I know the name, but Dick Duryea. Yeah, his wife was a secretary.
Yes.
Yes, and
His wife was a good buddy.
yeah, his wife was a secretary, and
That's how I
she and Bob Pond had a lot of arguments. Bob Pond was kind of an individual. I'll tell you just one little story about flying the Wildcat. Bob Pond would tell us, and Spook knows this, he'd say, on a weekend, we'd have maybe 15,000, 20,000 people attend. And he said, when you guys join up, I want you to stay close to the airport. I don't want you to go out and join up. I want the people to be able to see the airplanes. Well, I was flying the Wildcat, and I was flying wing on Clayton. What's Clayton?
Duryea?
No, not Duryea. But anyway, I was flying wing on a Hellcat. Hellcat is much faster. And the Wildcat, you have to crank the gear up. So we took off, and I formed up on his wing. And I told him, I said, now slow it up, because I have to be able to crank the gear up. And that canopy is manual. It takes both hands to close that canopy. Well, in that Hellcat, we were doing about 220. And I was on his wing. And I cranked the gear up, but I hadn't closed the canopy. And as you get over 200 knots, that wind buffeting, it's really uncomfortable, hitching the back of the head. And to get away from that buffeting, I'd lean my head way down in the cockpit, and he couldn't see me. He thought he'd lost a pilot. And then we got away from the airport, and I could break out so I could take both hands off the stick and close the canopy. I flew that airplane for about 5 years. It was really an experience. Anything, that's it.
Lou,
Yeah.
I'm curious, how many of you fellas have had a chance or opportunity or misfortune to have flown with Lou? Anybody in here? All from the plains of Maine? Hey, that's great. I flew with Lou one day. He probably doesn't remember it. It was one of the air shows.
I was scared.
You were scared. You were scared. I was flying with you. We're trying to generate interest for a Stearman ride. Lou takes off, and we make a sharp turn before we hit the end of the runway, and we're already pulling vapor off of both wings.
Well, you know, the problem is, for me, is when I was a pilot of the Plains of Fame, I was still working. And I don't know how many times Murph would call me, and he'd say, we got people out here like a Stearman ride. And I was working. It was hard for me to leave the office, even though I was working for the government. It shouldn't have been hard, but it was. to break away. And then when I retired, the museum closed. So it was just like this name tag rinse.
You know, nobody does it better. Let's give him a big hand.
No, a little more than that. A little more than that. But I won't tell them. Any other announcements?
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Hey, going along with this afternoon's theme. As I was coming over here, there were 3 T-6s flying in a formation. The number 4 guy was left a big space there, and it just dawned on me that I think they had a missing man formation over at Ken Dahlberg's.
Oh, yeah.
And the other airplane, I don't know, went away, or they just only had 3 airplanes.
That's great.
But
Okay, we'll see you next Wednesday.